This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Spring calls for a wardrobe refresh, and Nordstrom has the best styles of the season. From dresses and denim to standout tops and accessories, find the trends and essentials that feel right for you. Discover new arrivals from brands you love like Wave, Princess Polly, Mango, Adidas, and Free People. Plus, free shipping and returns and free styling appointments make everything so easy. Shop in stores at Nordstrom.com or download the Nordstrom app.
Hello and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. My name is Anne Foster and we are at the tail end of our Regency season. Just a few more episodes left in this really interesting season that we've been doing, looking at the real stories of the Regency era, a time period that's best known for Jane Austen novels and for That's When Bridgerton takes place, ostensibly. But we've been looking at a lot of interesting people who are that sort of like heteronormative marriage market type people, including Jane Austen herself, who never married. Today we're talking about the Chevalière Deane, who was a pioneer and an icon, a transcestor. She was a trans woman living in England during the Regency era. Previous to that, she was living in France. Previous to that, she was in Russia and in France before that. A fascinating, amazing story. And we first shared this story of the Chevalière Deane on Vulgar History in 2022. And I just thought I wanted to revisit it for our Regency season now that we've talked a lot about some of the people who the Chevalière has dealings with. People like Prinny shows up, the Prince of Wales. Joseph, the Chevalier de St. George, is in this story. And also I wanted to share this because this is the first queer history episode that we ever did on Vulgar History back in 2022. And my guest was the amazing author, Maya Deane, who is the author of a book called Wrath Goddess Sing. And that's why she was on my podcast while she was promoting Wrath Goddess Sing, a book that is still available, hardcover, paperback, ebook, audiobook. Can't recommend it enough. It's such a great book. Maya was an incredible guest, and she really did such a great job, I think, for me, for my first foray into looking at a queer figure from history, explaining queer history and the complexity of it and how you have to kind of decode the way that people were describing their own lives at their time to understand them as we might understand them today. And I do want to mention before we get into enjoying this episode again, the story of the Chevalière Deane, in honor of all of the queer and queer-coded stories we've looked at during this Regency series, which have been, I feel like, at least half of the stories we've looked at during this series. I'm doing a little fundraiser for the Trevor Project. So if you want to get a limited edition ringer tee designed by a friend of the podcast, Yanu Pater, also queer artist, you can go to vulgarhistory.com/Trevor. It's called that because it's raising funds for the Trevor Project, which is a suicide prevention hotline organization based out of the United States that focuses on helping out members of the LGBTQIA+ community. And it's a great organization to support. And I wanted to I love doing a fundraiser. I love marshaling the Tits Out Brigade together for a good cause. Anyway, the design for this ringer tee, designed by Yanu Pater. So it features all of the queer and queer-coded figures from this Regency era. It says the Regency queer-a, and that was just a pun I thought of myself, like Regency era, or like Regency queer-a. And so it says that, Regency queer-a, and you've got the Chevalière Deane is on there, Anne Lister, the Ladies of Llangollen. The Ladies of Llangollen's dog, called Sappho, is on there. Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire, Mary Wollstonecraft, Mary Shelley. It's a beautiful design. And when you buy a t-shirt, you can also make a donation there for the Trevor Project. And again, go to vulgarhistory.com/Trevor. And that fundraiser is going to be going on until the end of May. Anyway, without further ado, honestly enjoy this iconic Vulgar History episode about the amazing Chevalière Deane with special guest Maya Deane. I'm so excited today. I'm here with Maya Deane, author of, so at the time this podcast comes out, your book will have been out for a week, but we're recording it before it comes out. So can you just first of all, tell everybody about your book, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm Maya Deane. My book, which will be out by the time you hear this, is Wrath Goddess Sing, which is a retelling of the life of Achilles from the Iliad as the trans woman that she was. which is a bold claim, but So Wrath Gotta Sing really explores alternate and submerged readings of familiar myths to give us Achilles as she might have been in the Bronze Age, in a world that was just on the brink of collapse, a world that was in many ways much nicer to live in than the world of the next 1,000 years. In large parts of the region, like Mycenaean women had equal pay, apparently.
So just from like looking at like the what's out there, like your bio on your website and stuff, like you've been into like this mythology since a very young age, right?
Lifelong, absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like, so for me I feel like you are for like the Trojan War and like Greek mythology as I am for like the women of Tudor history, which is just like from like a weirdly young age. It's just like, this is my thing. And here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited for you, like that this book is coming out, that is, you get to explore all this stuff.
Oh gosh. Yeah. The Tudor period is so fascinating. You get so many big personalities.
No, exactly. And it's not about me. This is about you. But actually today we're talking, so you're joining me both because you have this book coming out and because I got the best email from your publicist saying like, Maya has this book coming out and here are some other things that she can talk about as well. And one of them was trans women of 18th century France. And I was like, literally, as I read that, I was like, I'm currently researching a trans woman from 18th century France. So like, this is the perfect opportunity. So today you're joining me and we're going to be talking about a woman whose name is, well, we're going to call her La Chevalière, which was kind of a title that she was given at one point. It's a French word. It means like knight, effectively, right? It's like, it's a role that she earned. So she was assigned male at birth, was a woman. And so the name, I'm just going to do my best with this extremely long French name. Her name was Charlotte Geneviève Louise Augusta Andrea Timothea Deon de Beaumont.
She kind of carried around a lot of names. Yeah.
She had, it's all of the names, which is why, I don't know, in history, like she's mostly like, people refer to her when you look it up. It's like the Chevalière, like that is how she tends to be known. And I feel like in her life, that's kind of like what she went by, maybe.
La Chevalière, yeah.
I love that. It's just sort of like the presence of that, just being like, it's not just like, oh, I'm Anne. It's like, oh, hi, I'm La Chevalière. Like, okay, like step back, like already this is a cool person.
Oh yeah, no, she made a big deal out of it. In fact, that was like one of the ways, like she was an early feminist. And one of the ways that she related to other early feminists who thought she was a cis woman who had been raised as a boy. But one of the ways she related to them was by like, Mary Wollstonecraft actually mentions her in passing in some of her writings, talking about how like La Chevalière proves that women can be warriors. And she knew that like she would be read that way. She intended, like she wanted to be understood and accepted by her cis women peers. Definitely she positioned herself that way intentionally.
Yeah. And so what, like, we're going to just kind of like go through like birth to death, like what was her situation. But it's like the gender stuff is such a big part of kind of the mythos that she like built up around herself, like how she kind of like used that for PR reasons. But I want to mention that like her life was also so interesting.
Right.
Aside from that, just like the espionage of it all, like there's a lot to get into. La Chevalière was born October 5th, 1728 in Burgundy into a poor noble family in a wine-bearing region. And I mention that because wine does become up later. It's like a thing that she's smuggling.
Oh my gosh, Burgundy. A lot of stuff was happening in Burgundy, actually, like Abbe de Choisy, better known occasionally as the Comtesse de Bar, actually lived as a woman in Burgundy for some years and wrote a very famous best-selling memoir that probably was still pretty accessible in Leah's childhood.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that. Did not know that detail. So yeah, Burgundy and the sort of like the early years, like just from what I've read, it's like pretty much, it's kind of like most people alive at that point in France, like we don't know a lot about like the early years because no one really wrote it down. So I just kind of know about like, she excelled in her schooling. She went into military training. By age 35, she'd gotten a law degree, published books about the French tax system, been knighted, and became a celebrated fencer.
Oh yeah, she was like a fantastic, like even much later in her life in England, she spent a fair bit of time giving exhibition fencing matches. I'm sure Georges de Boulogne will come up at some point.
Yeah. So just like right away, before we get into the rest of it, it's like, this is a person who's like really smart, really educated, really athletic and then skilled in these impressive ways. Fencing to me is like a really epic skill. Oh yeah, I also want to mention, so like much of what we know about her early life comes from, so she wrote an autobiography, but I don't think it was published. And I think it was it was ghostwritten, like she hired someone else to write it for her. But she wrote these other books as well. So in the introduction to this never completed autobiography, some modern day historians said that by 1758, she was a rising star among the young aristocratic elite who hoped to serve the monarchy in some important capacity. So she was just like smart, she was charismatic, she was talented. And it's just kind of like, she was from like, what did I say? It's like a noble but poor family, but she was like elevating herself just by virtue of being like so good, basically.
Yeah, her family had like the sort of positioning where they had noble enough blood and all that to be positioned where they could excel and could rise themselves through like skilled bureaucracy and stuff. And she was a talented intriguer. So
yeah, no, she was like ambitious. Like she was like, I'm just going to like make my mark in the world. Here we go. So she was given the role of a diplomat to Russia and England, like officially, but privately, what she was doing was she worked for the most clandestine spy service in France, Le Secret du Roi, or the King's Secret. So this was like, you could probably explain this better than I can, but like the king was like suspicious and he wanted to have these secret spies working directly for him, like not going through the rest of the political everything. So I love this. This is like, it's like a James Bond moment.
Yeah, a lot of people cast doubts on like some of the claims she made about her spying in Russia, mostly about the idea that she spent most of it, looking gorgeous in dresses. But I mean, that's not particularly implausible.
No, exactly. So yeah, that's the thing. There's something like, so she's charged with fostering good relations with the Russian court. So Empress Elizabeth is who was there. And so, okay, one article I read said, like the Empress liked to have balls, like metamorphosis balls, where like gender nonconformity was like celebrated and that's what was done, which is not to say that's how or why she started potentially dressing in glamorous dresses. But it's like, if it's already a court where like gender is not strictly binary, like maybe...
Great opportunity.
Exactly. And then I think I saw something about where it's like, because she was presenting as a woman, she was able to get into places like men maybe couldn't go, to like learn some more of the secrets, to like get closer to the Empress and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like that's certainly what she in her memoirs, she talks about essentially being able to get to all sorts of places that men couldn't go. Because there are so many historians who are trying to narrate her as cis, obviously there's like a line of critique where people say that, well, maybe she was exaggerating those stories to make herself seem more useful, but like probably not.
Honestly, I've had this in a couple other episodes of my podcast where like if someone writes their memoir and it says something that historians like that just doesn't fit into this like binary concept, they're like, oh, well, she's probably exaggerating. Like not just her, but other people are like, this probably isn't true. And I'm like, well, this is her memoir. And like, I trust her more than I trust like a 20th century, like cis white man being like, I don't believe it. It's like, well, I believe her if I'm going to believe anyone, frankly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's really an interesting thing. I mean, like this is what, like Catherine the Great is at court, that kind of thing. This period.
It's Elizabeth.
I mean, I know, so it wasn't Catherine the Great, like a junior figure at that point, not yet. Catherine
yes. Yeah.
I feel like in the fabulous and wildly historically inaccurate The Great, it would be like season 1.
Yes, exactly. I don't know. Anyway, I find it like, this is why I'm so happy to have you here, because like so much of this history, it's just been interpreted for so long by like cis white men who are like trying to make these stories fit into a paradigm that they understand. And part of it, I think, with the Chevalière is like, well, she's so impressive. She did these like, it's like, surely a woman couldn't have done these things. So it must have been a man in disguise. But like, then like the contortions you have to make that fit a story that clearly is the story of a trans woman. So yeah, exactly. Season 1 of The Great is what's happening. Apparently she dazzled in her posts. So like she was like in the fashion, the outfits, and again, just like the charisma, and she's so smart and I'm sure like quick and witty. So then France entered into the 7 Years' War with Britain, and Le Chevalière was ordered to return to become a captain. Oh, and this is where she was later admitted to the prestigious Order of St. Louis and honored with the title Chevalière, which means, so it's an honorific. It's just kind of, it's the equivalent of being like dame or like lady, whatever. After the war ended, she was appointed as liaison to the English court, but again, working directly for the king, with secret orders to scope out the coastline for a possible French invasion of England.
Yeah, that came in handy later.
Yeah. So it was a prominent position, but it wouldn't last. So according to this, the one source I was looking at here, she enjoyed England a little bit too much. She was strongly reprimanded for importing too much wine. And I feel like you can't take the Burgundy out of the girl. Like,
clearly.
So then within 6 months, she was fired for insolence and given 2 weeks to return to France. So she knew that if and when she returned to France, she'd be sent to jail, to the Bastille. So she just decided to like not return. She's just like, what if I stay in England? So the king, which is Louis, God, I'm so bad at telling the Louis apart, 15th, furiously ordered her to be extradited to France, but the British foreign minister refused, declaring her she was free to stay in Britain as a private citizen. So she's just like the scandal of it, you know, just she's setting herself apart from just like everyone else right away, because it's like the king is demanding her back, like the foreign minister is here, like she's just like at that. So already she's like a celebrity in that extent.
Oh, it gets even wilder because the way she got reprimanded for insolence was pretty weird. A new ambassador was assigned to England, and within a short period of time, they clearly did not like each other. She quickly started accusing him of trying to drug her at dinner, at which point she made these accusations public. So then he sued her for libel, which, I mean, it's Britain. If there's a constant that unites the 18th century to today, it's that it's really easy to sue people for libel. So she lost that case, but the British public sided with her and just started like pelting this guy when they saw him with like, you know, just fruits and vegetables. Like there was this huge scandal. And that's how she got like recalled for insolence. So I'm just wondering, like, why was he trying to drug her?
Yeah. I love, there's been like other stories in the podcast too, where it's like, the people of Britain, just like they riot at a moment's notice. They're just like, this is our star and we will defend her. And it's, yeah, I appreciate that consistency. So everything that she's doing is just like the most. Like, this is not like a low key life that she is living. The French Foreign Ministry made several attempts to kidnap and arrest her.
Yeah.
In retaliation, she made her most scandalous move yet, which is she published a book of state secrets full of correspondence from Le Secret du Roi, full of salacious details and the promise there was more to come unless the French king stopped trying to bring her back.
Yeah, I think she held back like the invasion plans.
But this is like, it's epic. I love that they're like, you're coming back, and she's like, oh, really? Like, well, what if I just like expose your entire like secret James Bond operation? And it worked. So the king agreed to leave her alone with a generous 12,000 livres salary on the condition that she did not reveal his worst secrets. So she was in England. She's just this like fabulous French woman in England in political exile. But I think I would assume, based on the scandal and the stuff that had happened already, like she continued to be a celebrity. Like people are just like all about her in England. So it's like, of course she'd stay there. Like they love her there. Okay. And then this is where I'm just like, please help me with this. So around 1770, rumors started to spread, potentially started by her, that she had actually been born a woman, but had been raised as a man in order to receive a family inheritance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of one of the ways you do it. Like in some ways, I think she was learning from some of the lessons that you could take away from like the lives of early 18th century French trans women, which we'll talk about more later. Because I think she decided, look, no, we have to actually convince everyone that I'm assigned female at birth, or else I will never get what I want. She probably did start the rumors herself because, I mean, she was literally a spy who intrigued constantly and used public opinion to get what she wanted. And yeah, I would not be surprised in the least. There was like a bet on the London Stock Exchange, just like giant betting pool, which is like perfect because that lets her do like this virtuous, no, I will not. It's like humiliating that you're even betting about this. I will not deign to reveal one way or another, which of course inflames the speculation even further. The betting pool lasts for like a year.
Yeah, no, I've got in my notes here, it says there was 3-2 odds that she was a woman.
I mean, it's probably not surprising. If we look at representations of her from her own lifetime, and especially from when she was relatively young, she's generally portrayed before she was outed as being quite beautiful. And she probably didn't look particularly masculine, given that most of those reports about that really started to happen after she died.
No, and I think just from what I understand, she was also, I think, like a short person, like for a short person with like a higher pitched voice anyway. So it wasn't like outside the realm of, like, so when she's like, oh yeah, no, actually I am a woman, everyone's like, oh yeah, that tracks. Like, like that tracks. So apparently at this time, forced to hire protection just to safely step inside her house because people wanted to like rip off her clothes to be like, what is your gender? Like people are just, so like, it's such a, I don't know, like just hearing about these like paparazzi level moments from like olden times. I'm just like humanity has been the same forever. Like there's always these like celebrities and people just like crowds follow them and whatever.
Yeah. What's determined weird enough to be worth invading privacy has varied culturally. But the fact that you can randomly invade people's privacy if you're curious and spread that to everyone else, that's been constant. I would argue since the Bronze Age.
Yeah. Well, no, it's giving me like early 2000s, like Perez Hilton upskirt shots of like Lindsay Lohan or whatever, right? Like people are just like wanting to rip off her clothes because she was like, they want to like consume her. So yeah. So the bet was abandoned. Oh, so that an envoy from Le Secret du Roi arrived in England to determine the truth, like about was she a woman? So she told all. She revealed she was a woman raised male by a father desperate for a son and heir. Which, again, as you said, it's like, yeah, you want to be able to start living as a woman. So you're just like, guess what? I've always been a woman, but in a way that people would understand.
Oh, yeah. Tons of like mid 20th century American trans women did the same thing. Like it was a very common approach.
Yeah. So let's see. So the question was brought all the way to the court of the King's Bench. On July 2nd, 1777, the English government formally pronounced she who had called herself the Chevalière d'Eon until that day was an individual who did not possess what the appellation man promised, and that she was a virago disguised in a uniform. I had to look up that word. Do you know that word?
Virago kind of signifies female masculinity. It's a Latin word that kind of suggests anything ranging from butchiness to like on its boundaries. It can sort of shade into that other like really ancient trope of the tribade.
Tell me about that.
The tribade is basically this like classical era, but also through the early modern era conception of like sort of an obligate lesbian who's partially virilized genitally, which of course would mean you have to go after women. It's just the way things work because it's very like, you know, sexuality was super gendered. So it's this combination of, well, this woman will act like a man.
Yeah. So they're saying like, okay, this person is not a man. She is a virago, which is basically like a mannish woman. Is kind of what they're saying. Yeah. But this is like, okay, so it's official. Like the English government formally pronounced that she's a woman. So this is from, I think, the article from, it's a site called them.us. So this was the perfect way to effect a public gender transition without losing her status or popularity by claiming to have been a woman, pretending to be a man all along.
Yep.
And then taking it one step further, she wedded her public transition to her pious religious nature, arguing that because she was at heart a good, honest Christian woman, she could no longer live a lie. And everyone's like, okay, fair enough.
Well, I can't allow you to be a man anymore. Yeah, exactly. And actually, there were a bunch of little things which some people have interpreted as ambivalence because it's convenient, but which I think is better understood as protesting just the right amount. So like, for instance, there was this whole kerfuffle over whether she could wear her military medals. She was very insistent that she could. But then there was this bit where she was like, and am I to be forced to wear women's clothing all the time? Surely that's not progressive. Maybe you could fund it. And then the king pays for a wardrobe by Marie Antoinette's genius dressmaker.
Oh my God. We're definitely going to get to that because, well, I'll just say right now. So like she went back. Okay. So she's officially declared a woman, age 49, just for the record. Yeah. So she negotiated her return to France. And part of that, like you just said, was like, but I'll need gorgeous dresses. Like, who will give me those? And the king's like, okay, I will. Yeah. She agreed to publicly present as a woman for the rest of her life. So she went back to France. She was formally presented at the court of Versailles. So there was a 4-hour makeover montage. So it included powdered hair and an elaborate gown outfitted by Marie Antoinette's own dressmaker, Rose Bertin. So it's not just like a coming out moment. It's like a coming out moment, like dressed in like Marie Antoinette, like in an outfit that takes 4 hours to like put on.
Yeah, it's very much an I'm on top of the world. Haha, I win moment.
Like in the movie that I'm imagining in my mind, this is just this moment of just like it's like, what is it? I don't know. Any movie with like the prom or the person like coming down the stairs and everyone's like, what? The nerd is beautiful. Like her coming out, just like having been dressed personally by Marie Antoinette's dresser, just like, I've arrived. Like, this is me. It's beautiful. Okay. So the way that this article, it says, being an 18th century noblewoman, after having been a soldier, spy, and diplomat was kind of like is a little boring. It's kind of like, well, I don't want to just like hang around a court doing whatever. Like I'm a spy, I'm a soldier. Like she wants to keep doing stuff. So for instance, when France sided with the colonists in the American Revolution, she asked to be put back in uniform to assemble an all-female battalion to fight the British. I love it.
I mean, and I think that that's best understood. Like it would be easy to decontextualize it and treat it as just some sort of weird pipe dream she had. But I think it's best understood in the context of that, figures like Wollstonecraft were talking about her as this like proof that women can fight. Like,
yeah,
I think there's a political element to that, especially given like some of her later like public work as an abolitionist. I'm not surprised that her feminism and her abolition would, appear in the form of, well, let's see if we can form regiments.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love that she's got all this military experience. She's like, let me use it. And then like her life is inherently, like you said, like it's proof that like women can do this. The government, apparently to that suggestion, said, well, why don't you join a convent?
Yeah.
Like just in terms of like not her being so progressive for the era and just being faced with people who are just like, does not compute. Like, no. A group of women sounds like a convent to me.
Yeah, I know. If she'd been 30 years younger, she would probably have been guillotined with a bunch of Revolutionary era French feminists.
Yeah. Luckily, she had the goods on the king, and so she kind of was safe in that way. So she returned to London because, frankly, her life just seemed like a lot better there. She said she's going back there to settle up some business, but it potentially was more just to escape the strict life that she was being forced into in France. So in London, she continued to write, because remember, she'd written all those books before, and she collected a large library of early feminist works, which I love. Like you were saying, like her Mary Wollstonecraft, like she's like, just as a figure of this time, she's like so into just like, let's get on this, like feminism, like let's make it happen. Like she's into it. While she was in England, though, the French Revolution happened. So actually, like, luckily, she was out of town. So the French monarchy was abolished, meaning she no longer had the protection or the pension that she had been getting from the monarchy.
Or for people who don't think she was actually a woman and that she was doing this as some sort of 40 chess thing, any reason to live as a woman if she wasn't one.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if the king had said, okay, you have to live as a woman. And so she did, like once the king died, like she didn't have to anymore. She was like, clearly this is what she was doing by choice, like for herself. And then this part bums me out, obviously, the less used for life. So she lived in poverty. She sold off her book collection, but you were saying like she's giving fencing displays. So this was like a way that she's making some money, was just like showing off her cool fencing skills. And people are like, what? A woman who's a fencer? Like she had this trademark, like long black dress that she would always wear.
Yeah, there were a bunch of exhibition matches with her and Joseph de Boulogne, the Chevalière de Saint-Georges, who is sometimes called the Black Mozart, although actually Mozart slept on his couch. And they were famous for being abolitionists, pressuring the British government to do something about the slave trade. But second, they would do their exhibition matches together. So like there are these political cartoons of just, her and Joseph de Boulogne just dueling, but also punching the Prince Regent.
So they were like, yeah, thank you for bringing that up as well. Cause I love the story of Joseph as well. I encountered it because the symphony here did a concert and I'm like, oh, who's this musician? I was like, oh my God, like, I love the music. I'm like, who's this person? I'm like, oh, and it's this guy, like, quote unquote, the black, but basically they just mean like, it's a black man who lived at the same time as Mozart, who had like a white wig on. So everyone's like, oh, the Black Mozart. Like,
yeah, but he was actually like, he was amazing. And he was actually a big influence on Mozart.
Yeah. But I love the image of this, like this black man, trans woman, just like doing these fencing displays. And everyone's just like, yeah, we stand. Like, we love you. Like, oh my God, it's these two. Like, so they're celebrities and really progressive, like abolitionists. Like, yeah, I love this moment. I love, and this is like the early 1800s. So this is like, if we want to put it into like, this is like Bridgerton era, it's like, that's happening with like the marriage market and like whatever, the Regency. And then at the same time, like they're doing these fencing displays, like it's all happening all at the same time. So she's making these fencing displays because she needed money because she didn't have her pension for all of her military work and spy work. And then she lived the last few years of her life with a roommate who is another woman. I haven't seen anything, actually, like, let's talk about that. So I haven't seen anything about the Chevalière having any romantic connections with anyone. Have you come upon anything about like her having a love life?
Honestly, no, which makes her relatively unusual compared to some of the other famous French trans women who were somewhat famous for their love lives. No, as no one knows. I mean, it just doesn't seem to come up. Now, partially it could be that she was very disciplined about her own PR. So for all we know, she had secret affairs that just never saw the light of day. But certainly this was not something that was much talked about.
Yeah. And I find that interesting in terms of how much the fact that people are just like trying to rip off her clothes. Like people are so interested in like every detail of her life, but there's never any sort of like scandal or rumors about her having affairs with anyone of any gender.
Well, granted, people trying to rip your clothes off is a great reason to be paranoid about that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I agree. And that's a real hint, like maybe you want to keep your love life private if you don't want.
Or potentially maybe you're a former spy and you don't trust anyone to see you in such an intimate way, especially given what happened when she was no longer alive to protect her privacy.
Yes. So she was living with this woman for the last several years of her life. And then she died in 1810. Her roommate discovered her body. And then I'll let you describe what happened to her body.
Then some physicians decided to examine her and they were like, oh, look, a penis. It's perfect in every way. At which point the scandal was worth a lot. There's actually like a drawing of her genitals in the British Museum because people were very curious. Her autopsy report also notes that, just like, okay, also boobs, very curvy, but look, a penis. And that then led to her defenders, people who wanted to protect her reputation from the horrific charge of being a trans woman, which was a lot more scandalous in 1800 than in 1700 for reasons, to concoct various explanations as to why she was never really a trans woman and just had to disguise herself as a woman for decades and decades and decades and decades for other reasons.
Yeah, no, it was like she lived openly as a woman for 33 years, where it's like, haha, I'm a spy and I'm going to just like a woman, like that's a long time. Like,
yeah, no one's that committed to the bit unless it's actually something they care about.
No, exactly. So that's where it's like I was saying before, like the contortions that I've been of historians trying to be like, okay, this is a story of a man who, because it was so clever and devious, decided to dress as a woman for 33 years.
I think some of them were doing it in kind of a horrifying attempt to rescue her reputation, which obviously is upsetting to me. But at the same time, yeah, like the contortions are extravagant.
Well, it's just like if there's two options and one of them is like, A to B, here's the thing. And the other one is just like, well, what if you go from A to Z to this, to this, to this, to this, to this? It's like, one of these is way more likely than the other one. Like amount of work you have to go through to see her as anything other than a trans woman it just really speaks to how much people were committed. Well, like you said, like I was thinking it was like people just couldn't wrap their head around it. But what you're explaining, and I see now, is they wanted to like preserve or like, I don't know, make her save her legacy
from the horrific charge. Yeah, like there were fencers who there was at least one famous like fencer who, among other things, was writing about how she and his father, also a famous fencer, were good friends, and he refers to her as herself throughout. But there's like a brief aside, just like, oh yeah, like sure, it came out later she was a man the whole time. Moving on. And like, I think what we see is plenty of people were not ashamed to have known her, were not ashamed of what she was, but maybe didn't have the political vocabulary to say, well, but actually, let's defend her womanhood on its own terms.
No, keep going. It's such a complicated, yet not complicated. It's just such a shitty thing, frankly. Like that she had this cool life and she's so amazing. And they're just like, well, let's finally reveal the genitals. Like, let's just like
put them in the British Museum.
Yeah, it's so gross.
They're still there. I mean, the drawing, not her body.
Yeah. Where it's like she was famous. Well, there was like the bet about like, is she a woman? But she was famous for like all these other cool reasons, not just because of the question of gender, and just to limit the legacy as just that. I think.
Oh, 100%. But like, I think we have to look at that in a context where it became much, 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 much harder to be a trans woman. And in a lot of ways, harder to be a trans woman in England, because this is the period of time where like between like her lifetime basically parallels the massive like police crackdowns on so-called Molly culture in England, which is essentially working class trans women and trans femmes. I would call it a culture that consisted of working class trans women and trans femmes and gay and bisexual men, with a lot of space carved out for the trans feminine. But during her lifetime, that stamping out and criminalizing that entire cultural element was a huge thing that was ongoing in England. Whereas like a few years before she was born, there was this massive bestseller, which was the Comtesse de Bois's memoirs. They're often referred to as the transvestite memoirs by cis historians. But yeah, this like the climate she was born into would have been in some ways more tolerant of gender variance than the climate she died in.
Which does explain kind of why she's drawn to living there at the time. Like when she first went there, it would have been more tolerant than what it was like by the time she passed away.
Yeah, and by the time she passed away, I think she'd very heavily relied on essentially passing as cis for the rest of her life, and having that validated with like official decrees and edicts and acts of parliament.
Yeah. And now for a quick advertising break.
Starting or growing your own business can be intimidating and lonely at times. Your to-do list may feel endless with new tasks, and lists can easily begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything as a built-in business partner can be a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Gymshark, Rare Beauty, and Heinz, to brands just getting started. Shopify has hundreds of ready-to-use templates that can help you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. And you can tackle all the important tasks in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to save multiple websites or try to figure out what platform is hosting the tool that you need. And if people haven't heard about your brand, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you, with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns to reach customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
Welcome to the realms of peril and glory. Explore the mechanically magical vistas of Vale, the paranormal mysteries of liminal London, and the cyberpunk chaos of Cyborg. Be awed by our incredible guests from familiar shows like Oxventure and No Rolls Barred. Search Realms of Peril and Glory to find out more.
The war is over, and both sides lost. Kingdoms were reduced to cinders, and armies scattered like bones in the dust. Now the survivors claw to what's left of a broken world, praying the darkness chooses someone else tonight. But in the Shadow Dark, the darkness always wins. This is old school adventuring at its most cruel. Your torch ticks down in real time, and when that flame dies, something else rises to finish the job. This is a brutal rules-light nightmare with a story that emerges organically based on the decisions that the characters make. This is what it felt like to play RPGs in the 80s, and man, it is so good to be back. Join the Glass Cannon podcast as we plunge into the Shadow Dark every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on youtube.com/theglasscannon, with the podcast version dropping the next day. See what everybody's talking about and join us in the dark.
Oh, please, not that music. That music gives me nightmares from my childhood.
Could we get something a little bit lighter, some lighter music here?
Are you a fan of true crime TV shows?
And what about Unsolved Mysteries, the show that jump-started all of our love of true crime?
I'm Ellen Marsh.
And I'm Joey Taranto.
And we host I Think Not, a true crime comedy podcast covering some of the wildest stories from your favorite true crime campy TV shows all the way to Unsolved Mysteries.
Baby, you will laugh, you will cry, you'll think about true crime in a whole new way, and you'll also ask yourself, who gave these people mics?
New episodes of I Think Not are released every Wednesday, with bonus episodes out every Thursday on Patreon.
And every Monday, you can listen to our True Crime Rundown, where we go over the top true crime headlines of the week.
So come and join us wherever you listen to your podcasts.
And we're back. Which is just honestly, like, I can't, it's so major to just be like, not only like what's the proof that I'm a woman? It's like, well, like this act of parliament, like the French king has said. So you're like, okay, like, cool. That's like, what more proof do you need? So she was buried in the churchyard of St. Pancras Old Church. Her remaining possessions were sold by Christie's auction house in 1813, and her grave is listed on the Burdett Coates Memorial there as one of the important graves lost. I don't know much about this, but the Beaumont Society is a longstanding organization for transgender people named after her. I don't know if you know anything about that organization.
I don't, but basically not long after she died, like from the 19th century to the present, obviously, trans people, however we describe ourselves, I mean, the terminology has changed a lot, but we've been around forever, have looked to her as, you know, an example of someone who successfully got the King of France to declare her a woman, like, and just as evidence that you can be like an incredibly talented trans woman.
I love her story for that. And I love her story just for being just this like scandalous, like wild, like who's just like, I was a spy. And then it's just like, I decided to stay in England. So I'm just going to like basically blackmail the king. Yeah. Like the audacity with which she lived is great. It's like, it's such a good story. This is where it's like, it's all intrinsically connected with like her identity, like as a trans woman. But, and so, which is why it bothers me to see her legacy being reduced to being like, but what were the genitals? Where it's like, there's 10,000 other more interesting things to talk about.
Alas, that seems to be the trans feminine condition in trans misogynist societies.
I think this is where I first heard about her. So in 2012, the National Portrait Gallery in London purchased a portrait of her, which had been for a while, like no one knew who it was a portrait of. They're just like a portrait of a middle-aged woman. And then there was, oh no, this is a Chevalière. And then it was, but I think that's where there's a lot of press about the portrait being purchased, the identification of the portrait. So that's where I had first heard about it. And so now the portrait, I think itself, it's, I don't know. I love it. Like 2012 was a good period of time in terms of like the internet existing or whatever, where this portrait came out and there's a lot of articles, a lot of discussion about it. And that brought, I think, a new level of attention to her story, which is good.
Well, I think that one of the things that contemporary representations of her show, and then we touched on this a little bit before, is just the extent to which people kind of redrew her when they knew she was a trans woman. Like, so especially portraits that are from before her death portray her extremely differently. She's just a younger middle-aged woman, an older middle-aged woman. Sometimes in the scandalous years where they're speculating she's a very hot young woman, blah, blah, blah. And it's just really revealing that a relatively unremarkable portrait of her would go unlabeled for 200 years because it didn't look stereotypically mannish enough.
I love that she was at a level, well, for anyone that do in this podcast, I love when there's actual portraits of people, because there's so many women in history where there's not. But I love that she was at a level of fame and importance that she was. Portraits of her were done during her life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So she has appeared as a character in some fictional works. This is the legacy portion of it. So there's a film in 1928, The Spy of Madame Pompadour. 1959. Okay, this is a film loosely based on her life that portrays her as a woman masquerading as a man, which is
pretty much just taking her propaganda and running with it, which is fine.
Yeah, so that's The Secret du Chevalière d'Eon from 1959. 2006, have you seen or are you familiar with the anime series, The Chevalière d'Eon?
I've heard of it. I haven't been able to actually track it down. I'd love to.
What I know of it is that it's some sort of supernatural type thing where she it's like the spirit of her dead sister lives in her body, and she switches back and forth between a masculine person and a feminine person. So almost like a Sailor Moon transformation. So
I love Sailor Moon, but
yeah. Sailor transformation in kind of the worst possible way. I have not seen it, but that is what I've heard about it. And that's also, honestly, when you look up the Chevalière d'Eon, a lot of your search results are going to be about this anime series. I'm interested in this and I've not listened to it, but the Doctor Who audio series has an episode featuring her, which I think is interesting. And she appears as an unplayable character that gives out side quests in the video game Assassin's Creed Unity.
That's not a surprise, but I'm not familiar with the portrayal. Unity is one of the few Assassin's Creeds I haven't played.
I don't know. There's been a couple of people who've done the podcast where it's just when you're looking at them in pop culture and it's and they're in Assassin's Creed. I'm like, should I play Assassin's Creed? All these people.
Well, Assassin's Creed is filled with historical Easter eggs.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of their, as long as you can get past the cheesy, ridiculous sci-fi frame narrative, there's a lot to like. Yeah.
No, and that's where I'm just I forget who, just a couple other historical figures. I'm they're in Assassin's Creed. I'm they're in Assassin's Creed? The more I hear about it, the more I'm I'm intrigued. Okay, I want to talk to you. We need to do, so on my podcast, we do a score for everybody, just on various categories. And I'm going to get your thoughts about where the Chevalière is going to fall. So there's 4 categories. The first category is scandaliciousness, which is just, as you can probably presume, just kind of how gossipy and fantastic was this person's life and story.
What's the scale?
The scale is 0 to 10. So 10 being the highest. So
I think definitely 10 on scandaliciousness. I mean, she blackmailed the King of France. I will reveal your invasion plans. That's basically she said, I will start a war. I will literally start a war if you don't back off.
I agree entirely. And then when you add on to that, the fact that she was a spy, that she worked for this super secret spy network, it's a high score there. The next category, so again, it's a 0 to 10. So the next one is scheminess. So just and that can be sort of how smart she was, but how many plans she did, were they good schemes? And I feel this is going to be a high score as well, but I will default to you.
I would say at least an 8.
Yeah.
Maybe she wasn't able to successfully get an Amazon army, which clearly was her end game, and which would have been amazing. So can't give her the 10 there, but
yeah,
she was a skilled schemer.
I think between the fact that she was very successful as a spy, and then the fact, like the way that she stayed in England, and then the blackmail plot, and then also the way that she'd like used her celebrity and PR to just like affect this transition. Like, I agree. I think an 8 is good.
And like, you know, she was remarkably successful destroying the career of the diplomat who apparently drugged her.
Yes. Yes. I don't have a scale for like vengeance, but I feel like she would get that too. Because she's just like, oh, you crossing with me? Like, guess what? Like, I've been a spy my whole life. I'm super smart and like, I will destroy you. And she did. Not a person you want to cross. The next category is significance. So this can be both like her significance, like at the time she was alive, but then like the legacy, what she means to other people, but also like what she did that could have set the stage for future generations of people.
Well, that's really complicated. Like, we're still talking about her, and so many trans women I know are motivated to claim her because the gall, like the nerve.
Well, that's why I think her significance is really strong to the trans community. So I think if you just see it through that scale, like how significant is she?
Yeah. And I would say her significance, she would have been a much more significant figure in the history of early feminism if cis women hadn't dropped her after the genital reveal. Like, definitely you don't see the next generation after Wollstonecraft treating her as the same level of figure. Mm-hmm. And it has everything to do with just having decided that she was never a woman.
Honestly, though, when we think too about the significance of like her actions in the war, her actions as a spy, like we can never quantify what exactly that did, but I think she was involved in France's success. Mm-hmm. Some of these
probably
as well. Yeah, but it's good. It's hard to say. So I don't know. Where would you put her for significance?
To the trans community, probably an 8, 9. Mm-hmm. More broadly, 6, 7.
Okay, I'm going to average that out to like 7.5.
Cool.
But yeah, no, I like how you broke that down, because yeah, it's like significance to the trans community really high. But then I think she should be more significant to a broad extent, but she's not. So it's like we need to be. Yeah.
I mean, I think Wollstonecraft had it right. Like.
So then the last category, so it's the sexism category, which is just like how much did the patriarchy hold her back? Everybody gets at least a 5 because, of course. But like, how much did sexism hold her back?
10.
Yeah.
In life and in death, like it's pretty clear that the scope of her ambitions was enormous. Clearly, she wanted to end slavery. Clearly, she wanted to end patriarchy. Like, and of course, the two are linked. Clearly, she wanted to do a great deal, and she managed to do a lot for herself. But she did die poor. And then she, you know, for the next 200 years, people argued about whether she was like a trans woman or just a man with a really good reason to pretend to be a trans woman, which is much more comfortable.
And I hate how that obfuscates all of the cool stuff that she had been doing to like limit her to just be like, oh, look at this interesting gender story, where it's like, no, like she wanted to send an all-women brigade to the American Revolution. Like she wanted, like she was so into like the feminist stuff at the time, like with, no. So how that all adds up, just so you know, is a 35.5. The highest score anyone's ever got on the podcast is a 38. So she's like close.
Ooh, it's a 38.
38 is Fredegund. I don't know if you know about Fredegund.
Oh, yes, I know Fredegund.
She's like, who can top her? So far, nobody. But yeah, so Fredegund is a 38. Queen Margot is 37.5.
I mean, Fredegund gets extra points for like gleeful murder, right?
Fredegund gets points for a lot of murder-based things, yeah. And Jinga of Angola has a 36. Harem Sultan has 36, and then the Chevalière, 35.5. So she's in fifth place overall.
It's a good ranking.
I'm happy. I'm happy for her. I think she deserves to be right up there. Now, since I have you, who are the other two trans women of the 18th century who you want to talk about?
All right. Well, let's start with the lower ranking one first. Known to history as the Abbé de Choisy and from Burgundy, but also known better, I think, well, I'm not going to misgender her. I'm just going to call her de Bar. because she decided she was the Comtesse de Bar for several years and then wrote a massively successful memoir about it. Essentially, the story she put out was that her mother simply decided she was a girl and raised her accordingly. But like, that was probably political maneuvering as well, because that was just how she preferred to be. And also because she spent much of her childhood as playmate to Louis XIV's trans sister. More on that in a second.
Okay.
Their mothers were tight and were just like, well, let's just get them both great dresses. Like, life may be hard, but it doesn't have to be hard now. So at the age of 18, she was sort of heavily socially shamed and was like, okay, fine, I guess I'll try to dress as a boy for a bit. Didn't like it, stopped almost immediately, and spent vast amounts of money on ridiculously gaudy outfits because she was a fashionista. At one point, the Dauphin's like hard-ass tutor comes up to her at a party and is just like, you should be ashamed of yourself. You disgust me completely. What's wrong with you? And she's like, well, I can't just have people walking up to me at parties doing that. I've got to get out of Paris. So like, she retreats to the countryside. She has her lawyer prepare for her an identity as a respectable widow and the Comtesse de Bar. She dyes her hair. She's like, yeah, okay, fine. We'll just go with really dark hair for now. And then suitably disguised, she basically just starts sleeping with everyone in sight, according to her memoirs. Like, well, she only really records the women she slept with because that wasn't illegal. Like, there was no potential death penalty for sleeping with women. So it's like memoirs of a trans lesbian. She gives her skincare regimen in passing in her memoirs. Her memoirs are actually hilarious. They're kind of ridiculous. She starts them off by basically she's like, every so often I try to stop being a woman. Like, I put on boy clothes and the darndest thing keeps happening. I just gamble all the time. She's like, I spend so much money gambling that eventually I just realized I can't keep doing this anymore. So I re-pierce my ears, put on a great dress, and I feel great. She's like, let me tell you about my skincare regimen. My skin is amazingly soft. Of course, I'm gorgeous. And her memoir just continues in this vein. Like, it's hilarious. And
I love it. Like,
incredibly arrogant. She was probably annoying to be around, but she was hilarious. There's a rumor that I find somewhat credible that one of her lovers was Prince Eugene of Savoy, which would be scandalous on multiple levels, especially since this is like roughly War of the Spanish Succession era. No, it's a little before that. I guess it's before that. So maybe it's not that scandalous. Maybe it's just scandalous because, Prince Eugene of Savoy. She's also known for being part of a diplomatic mission to the Kingdom of Siam.
Really?
And writing extensively about it. She wasn't just a pretty face. David Hume actually had both her like scandalous memoirs and her account of the situation in Siam in his library. Eventually, she sort of went back to the countryside and just carried on writing letters to various scandalous people. Her memoirs were a big bestseller posthumously, but also there were a bunch of open secrets during her life. She's an interesting figure to me. She also apparently wrote a fairy tale with Charles Perrault, and I forget which feminist writer of the late 17th century, but it was like Charles Perrault, the writer of fairy tales, this feminist, and her sat down to write a fairy tale. The fairy tale is essentially the story of this young marquise who has this interesting backstory where her mother was like, I'm going to have a girl. Then after her child was born, she was informed she had a boy. And she was like, no, girl. Fairy tale proceeds. The young girl was raised in extravagance. She had all these wonderful things. She had all the accomplishments you would expect. Pretty dresses too. And so on and so forth. Then it's like, and then one day she meets this handsome young marquis, her exact social station. Wonderful. Match made in heaven. They fall for each other. They arrange a marriage. On the wedding night, they're disrobing innocently, not suspecting anything could be amiss. And then basically what happens is they both have a surprise genital reveal, sort of look at each other, shrug, and are like, well, this is fine. And proceed with their lives happily ever after, which is like, I guess you could say early tea for tea. I'm trying to find a good copy of that, but it's difficult to track down. There's I forget which university press has a pretty good omnibus with it, and her memoirs, but like from 2004. So I dread the author's note. But yeah, so that's the Comtesse de Bar, or the Abbé de Choisy.
Yeah.
And the person whose playmate she was, Philippe, the trans sister of Louis XIV, has a completely bananas life as well.
Okay. I'm so excited to hear.
So clearly in her childhood, at least according to Choisy, she had a playmate who was also a trans girl, and they hung out together and they wore dresses and everything was great. But she was also like a pretty major prince, which brought a lot of heartbreak. So she had this famous on again, off again relationship with this duke. It was very stormy. At one point, she marries, I forget who, someone important. And then, of course, he feuds, like the duke feuds with her wife. It's this whole mess. Her wife gets the duke sent to the Bastille, or no, was it to the Chateau d'If? Mm-hmm. Yeah, her wife gets her boyfriend sent to the Chateau d'If. Then she has to go to her brother and be like, please let my boyfriend out of the Chateau d'If. Please let my boyfriend out of the Chateau d'If. She was apparently a very successful general, like terrifying field commander, and famously had a statue of Achilles created in the gardens of Versailles. It's Achilles on Skyros. So it's like Achilles in a beautiful dress looking like the woman warrior she was. Apparently very significant to Philippe because that was her contribution to the gardens at Versailles, which I find pretty interesting. It's like, oh, okay. She definitely related to this particular version of Achilles who's interpreted as a trans feminine person. When she died, her friends were like, oh, she was the silliest woman who ever lived. Like, basically, that was her obituary. Her life was probably pretty sad, but like also very privileged, with stormy boyfriends and wives who sent those stormy boyfriends to the Chateau d'If.
Since you brought up the statue of Achilles, I feel like it's a natural progression to wrap things back around to your version of Achilles in your book, which everybody should buy and read.
I agree. Buy Wrath Goddess Sing, read Wrath Goddess Sing. You'll get to meet Achilles. So
I know like the vague outlines of the story of Achilles, but I'm not familiar with the part you just said about what the statue is made of, like the Achilles, like this Achilles dress. Like what's that story?
So one of the parts of the Achilles mythos is, and this is in a bunch of different classical sources, and also represented on art from the classical period. Probably it reflects a pretty old tradition. It's not referenced in the Iliad, but it appears on art pretty early, where Achilles lived for years before the Trojan War as a woman named Pyrrha on the island of Skyros, and had a relationship with the princess of Skyros, Deidamia. So Achilles was a trans lesbian. And that episode was super popular in art, literally from the classical period to the 19th century, when it kind of stopped, because all of a sudden people needed a little more consistency in their gendered representations of Achilles. But yeah, frequently, like a surprisingly often amount of the time, Achilles is portrayed as a woman. Mm-hmm. We see this in the Renaissance. We see this in the Middle Ages. We see this in the classical period. Achilles was often portrayed by women on stage. Shakespeare kind of riffs on that when he makes his Achilles very feminine. It's just a really long-standing tradition. There's a Roman epic, unfinished epic called the Achilleid, which by Statius, which I detest, which is one of the more elaborated forms of that story. Statius just decides to take the narrative and go as transmisogynist as he can in order to, I guess, make Achilles like the kind of man the Romans could relate to. In that version, Achilles is forced to live as a woman by his mother in order to prevent Achilles from going to war. So the first scene is just like, Mom, I can't believe you would force me to live as a woman. I'm so mad at you. Wait, the princess of Skyros is hot. I'm going to rape her. And that's what happens. Which, I mean, that's the kind of thing that the Romans vibed with. It's definitely not the kind of thing I vibe with. So I thought to myself, well, this cannot stand. Then I thought to myself, also, isn't it a simpler and more economical story if Achilles is just a trans woman?
Exactly. It's the Chevalière all over again.
Yeah. So that was the point of departure for writing Wrath Goddess Sing.
Yeah.
We start on Skyros. She ran away from Thea some years before, like less than 2 years before, but a couple years, in order to live as herself. She's constantly worried that sails in the distance might mean that her Myrmidon relatives have come to collect her. Sails appear. They turn out to be Diomedes and Odysseus, who are looking for Prince Achilles and have no idea that the polite young woman they just encountered is Prince Achilles. And it kind of goes from there. But it gets very weird.
Yeah. I'm so excited about it. I'm very much looking forward to reading it. And I think could you have known when you were writing this book that it's coming at this moment where people are like obsessed with like Circe and like the Trojan women, like books about this time period? These myths are like having a moment, and like, here you come.
Honestly, we had so many publishers pass because they were like, the Song of Achilles just came out 10 years ago. Surely this wave is over.
And then enter like book talk, and suddenly everybody is all about it.
Yeah. And I think too, that's a great time to just sort of think about what we're doing as we retell, because there are so many different ways to retell. And these stories were never neutral. Like the Iliad, for instance, Alexander the Great slept with a copy of the Iliad under his pillow and literally would occasionally just say, my ancestor Achilles was killed in this area, so I can invade. Like it became the foundation of like the Hellenistic imperial colonial literature. The British used it the same way. The Iliad is like retellings and framings of these stories are never neutral. And I think it's really interesting to think about what we're doing when we decide to make Achilles the kind of person who would only ever deign to wear women's clothing in order to rape princesses, or when we reject that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels very timely.
Yeah, I think it's coming at the perfect moment for this book. I think not just because of like retellings happen to be like popular, but just because of where we are as a society. Not to get into all of that, but I think it's so important. And I think this is part of what was in the message I got from your publicist, was just saying like, what is it? It's like a book about a trans character written by a trans author being published by this huge publisher. Like this is like groundbreaking in those ways.
Yeah, it's something that couldn't have happened even a few years ago. And hopefully in a few years, it'll continue to be conceivable.
No, but I think like as everything we've just been talking about, like it's just such a good reminder, or maybe some people who didn't know that like trans people have been here all along.
The earliest writer whose name we know, Enheduanna, writes extensively, like basically praising the goddess Inanna that transition is possible. And there are substantial hints in the text that at least Enheduanna either was the author or was regarded as the author of these super famous religious hymns that were used for the next 2,500 years. And there are definitely trans elements in how Enheduanna is described in these hymns as well, which wouldn't actually be surprising, but it would be one of those cases of a historical figure who has just been presumed cis because there's not affirmative evidence of transness. But affirmative evidence of transness doesn't even help, as we see with the Chevalière.
Yeah. God, you know so much about everything. I'm just like learning.
Thank you.
I'm learning so much from you. So you've always had an interest in Greek mythology. You said that's been kind of like your thing from a young age. Did you study history, or is it more of like, did you like officially study history, or is this just like you just do it yourself?
Oh no, I'm a talented amateur.
Yeah.
No, my formal degrees are in fiction.
Okay.
But no, trans history, I mean, I would also say, like, to be interested in the written word, growing up as a trans woman, as a millennial, meant constantly encountering buried trans stories, likely at Deboma, but also like in Hidwana, or like Yusupov, who killed Rasputin Yusupova, has a memoir, Lost Splendor, which essentially amounts to coming out repeatedly as a trans woman, but also being confident no one will ever actually get it. So, like, at one point, the assassin of Rasputin just spends chapters talking about how gorgeous she was in her dresses as she lived for years as a woman in her brother's house before there was a giant scandal that caused her family to find out. And like, you run into these stories, you look around, everyone is just saying, oh, you know, he was just unusual over and over again, but they build, and it becomes this itch in the back of your brain you can't scratch. It becomes this sensation like walking over your own grave constantly. You just have these buried stories. So I would say more than anything, my love of stories and mythology and history is also tied to that. It's tied to, there's hidden stories that can see the light of day, but only if we actually encounter them on their own terms instead of saying, nope, nothing to see here.
Yeah, so it's like detective work.
Mm-hmm. It's like unforgetting.
Yeah, it's like brushing away all these like convoluted explanations that don't actually make any sense to be like, oh, but the obvious thing is like, oh, this is a trans woman. Like if we just remove like 75% of this like biography and just like focus on like what actually the facts are, you're like, oh, well, here's the story of a trans woman. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, so it's just like just weeding through all that stuff.
Yeah, in a way, it's like a demystification.
And it's like a clarification of just, if you get rid of all the like confusing other people, well, all history, I guess, is written by somebody with an agenda. But once you realize that agenda, if you're like, well, how many of these facts are being filtered through somebody's point of view? And then like at the end of the day, when you get rid of that point of view, like what is left?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it so fascinating.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. This is like, I can't wait to publish this. I can't wait for everybody to hear everything you have to say. I can't wait for people to learn, like, A, about the Chevalière, and B, about you and your book.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm really excited.
Thank you so much for this amazing conversation.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
So the first and most important thing is Maya Deane's book, Wrath Goddess Sing, available in stores everywhere, hardcover, paperback, ebook, audiobook. It's a wonderful book, and I really think everybody should read it, frankly. And if you want to support the fundraiser that we're doing for the Trevor Project, you can go to vulgarhistory.com/Trevor to get your Regency queer ringer tee designed by Jan Juveter, featuring all of the queer Regency era figures we've talked about this series, including Le Chevalière d'Eon. And I do want to mention, since I recorded this episode in 2022, since then I've been on a few trips actually to England, and at the National Portrait Gallery, there's the portrait of the Chevalière d'Eon, the one that was recently discovered, the oil painting. And then there's also every clip I think that they had in their collection about the Chevalière d'Eon is all on a wall together. So you can see all these images from pamphlets and things. And I love that she's so present at the National Portrait Gallery in England, because she, a French person, but really made her mark in England as well. And there was, as far as I know, the most recent portrayal of Le Chevalière d'Eon was on the Apple TV Plus show Franklin, starring Michael Douglas as Benjamin Franklin, which takes place when he was in Paris. And he meets up with the Chevalière d'Eon at one point, and I was just excited to see her out there appearing as a character in costume dramas. And like, let's get some more queer figures and more of these historical things like they're going to be doing with a new season of Bridgerton. Anyway, more Regency era episodes coming up for the next 2 weeks. I think we have 2 more Regency era stories to get to. And at the end of it, we're going to be doing a big playoff. We're going to be choosing the diamond of the season, like they do on Bridgerton. So it's a series of polls and votes based on the seeding for these things are going to be based on everybody's scandaliciousness score. You, the listeners, will be voting on all these matchups until one person emerges as the diamond of the season. And it'd be really cool if Chevalière d'Eon won. I'm honestly not biased. We've had so many iconic stories this series. I'd be happy with anyone winning, and I'm curious to see who will. Anyway, I'll have more details about that coming up in later episodes of this podcast. I wrote a book. It's called Rebel of the Regency, the scandal saga of Caroline of Brunswick, Britain's queen without a crown. And Chevalière Deane does not appear in that book. Although Caroline of Brunswick was an ally, she had some sapphic friends, and she hung out with some queer people, and she was a chill lady, and I think you'd like reading about her. Anyway, you can get that book. It's available in North America, and at the end of May 21st, it's going to be available in the UK. I thought it was going to be there earlier. It wasn't. I think the ghost of Prinny was stopping it. Its little ship sailing from North America full of books over to the UK. But anyway, May 21st. It will be there for you, UK listeners. Stay strong. It'll be there for you soon. Anyway, next time, more Regency era scandals to get into. And until then, keep your pants on and your tits out. Vulgar History is researched, scripted, and hosted by Anne Foster. Editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. Regency-era artwork by Karen Moynihan. Social media videos by Magdalena Denson. Transcripts of this podcast are available at vulgarhistory.com by Aveline Malik. You can get early, ad-free episodes of Vulgar History by becoming a paid member of our Patreon at patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter. Vulgar History merchandise is available at vulgarhistory.com/store for Americans and at vulgarhistory.redbubble.com for everyone else. Follow us on social media at Vulgar History Pod. Get in touch with me at vulgarhistorypod@gmail.com.
Legendary stories, awe-inspiring sound, and endless adventure. Welcome to the realms of peril and glory. Explore the mechanically magical vistas of Vale, the paranormal mysteries of liminal London, and the cyberpunk chaos of Cyborg. Fall in love with our core cast, or be awed by our incredible guests from familiar shows like Oxventure, Three Black Halflings, and No Rolls Barred. Ignite your imagination and discover the realms of peril and glory today. Go to realmspod.com or search Realms of Peril and Glory wherever you listen to podcasts.
Ever open up your podcast app, scroll forever, and still not know what to listen to? And there are millions of podcasts, and most of them, they just don't grab you. That's why I created Something You Should Know. Every episode is built around surprising, useful, and fascinating ideas. We're consistently ranked in Apple's top 200 with thousands of 5-star reviews. But more importantly, people come back because they learn something interesting every time. If you're tired of searching and you just want something good to listen to, try one episode of Something You Should Know right here on the platform you're listening on right now.
There are names that echo in the world of true crime, names that carry unanswered questions. Oakley Carlson, a 5-year-old girl who deserved safety, protection, and love, yet the system built to protect her failed, and Oakley disappeared. Her community still calls her name.
Or Ellen Greenberg, found in her locked apartment with 20 stab wounds, a case declared a suicide. But how does a locked apartment tell two different stories at once?
These are not just cases we have covered. They are people. They were loved, and they mattered.
Their stories deserve to be told with care, with depth, with truth.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Ricky.
We are the husband and wife duo behind Crime Salad.
Every week we uncover stories of the missing, the silence, the misunderstood. We ask the questions that were left behind. We refuse to let these stories be forgotten.
Because behind every case is a family holding on, a community seeking answers, and a story that deserves to be heard.
We invite you to listen to Crime Salad,
your healthy portion of true crime, wherever you get your podcasts.